The Last Confederate, the mystery of the final soldier of the South. The twilight years of the Confederate generation are shrouded in both reverence and confusion. Over the course of the 20th century, as the ranks of the old soldiers of the South dwindled to a handful of centenarians, competing claims arose over who truly held the title of the last living Confederate veteran. By mid-century, three men, James Albert Spicer, Pleasant Riggs Crump, and Walter Washington Williams, stood at the center of that debate. Each represented a different facet of Southern remembrance, but only one of them can be confirmed beyond dispute as the last man standing. James Albert Spicer, 1844 to 1948. James Albert Spicer of Virginia enlisted in Company K of the 7th Virginia Infantry, a regiment that saw fierce action in many of the Army of Northern Virginia's campaigns. A native Virginian, Spicer was revered in his home state as one of the last living witnesses of the Confederacy struggle. When he passed away in February 1948, newspapers across Virginia honored him as the last Confederate veteran of the Old Dominion. His service is relatively well documented and remains beyond question, though his claim applied to the Commonwealth of Virginia rather than the entire South. His advanced age, clear recollections, and verified enlistment make him a credible but regionally confined claimant. Walter Washington Williams, claimed 1842/1854, 1959. A decade later, the nation's press turned its attention to Walter Washington Williams of Texas, who died in December 1959 at a reported age of 117. He was publicly celebrated by President Eisenhower and the national press as the last surviving Confederate soldier. However, modern historical scrutiny reveals severe inconsistencies in Williams's story. Census records from 1860 list him as only 5 years old, making it impossible for him to have served during the war. No Confederate muster roll or pension record substantiates his claim, and his birth date appears to have been inflated in later life. Thus, while Williams may have been an honest Texan who identified with the Confederate cause, he was almost certainly not a soldier of it. His fame rests largely on legend and post-war nostalgia rather than verifiable fact. Pleasant Riggs Crump, 1847 to 1951. The honor of being the last verified Confederate veteran belongs to Pleasant Riggs Crump of Alabama. Born in 1847, Crump enlisted in the 10th Alabama Infantry at the age of 17 and fought in the trenches of Petersburg during the final months of the war. His service record is authentic and preserved in Confederate archives. Crump lived quietly in Alabama for the remainder of his long life, a respected man who shunned the spotlight that later attached itself to Williams. He passed away on December 31, 1951, at the age of 104. His military record, pension documents, and contemporaneous verification confirm beyond doubt that he was the last genuine soldier of the Confederate States Army. When the smoke of myth and media confusion clears, and the gray uniform truly goes on, history recognizes that Pleasant Riggs Crump was the true last Confederate veteran. James Albert Spicer rightfully holds the distinction as one of Virginia's final soldiers of the lost cause, but Crump's record stands as the last nationally verifiable Confederate combatant. Walter Williams's claim, though sentimental and widely publicized, fails the test of documentation. The confusion arose because the public, eager to keep the living memory of the Confederacy alive, embraced comforting legends over verifiable truth. Pleasant Riggs Crump, a quiet farmer soldier of Alabama, thus represents the closing page of the living Confederacy, a man who had heard the guns of Petersburg, seen the stars and bars flags furled, wiped down his horse with a star-spangled rag at Manassas, and lived long enough to witness a nation that had forgotten the hardships of his youth. In him ended not merely a life, but the last living breath of a vanished era in American history.